Hey Cynthia, how's it going?
Good. Hi, Melina.
So we are here today because we're going to be, you and I, as mothers, are going to be celebrating Mother's Day. So I wanted to have a conversation
Yes.
about motherhood, and that could be very expansive, but I really want to talk about because you and I are entrepreneurs. We have children, and you have a husband that you got to take care of. So family is a big part of our lives, but there's also stress that comes with that, right? So I'm interested to see how your life's been like with having a business and taking care of the children. And yeah, please expand on that. Tell me your story.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually did not grow up in Canada. I actually grew up in Brunei for the longest time and then came here for school. And then met my husband. Then we were in a relationship for 6 years before we got married and then have kids. It's been harder in Canada just because there's not a lot of like village here that I can turn to. In Brunei, like growing up, you just your your friends are basically your extended family. Here is like your village is mom groups, so I lean heavily into like the Google of like motherhood knowledge from other moms, and I'm so tremendously thankful for that. So even though it felt like lonely, it was a lot of like challenges because um becoming a mother, it meant a lot of things for me. It involved like acknowledging grief in a lot of ways because when we become mothers, we grieve what used to be our identity.
Right.
So if you think of like a caterpillar transitioning into a butterfly or becoming a larva, so to speak, like the cocoon. So I felt like motherhood was kind of like a metamorphosis for me, just transitioning from one stage of life to the other. But oh gosh, if someone told me half the things to expect after birth, I would probably have skipped that part. like just like nobody told me that I actually would end up being in adult diapers and my kid would be also in diapers. Yeah. Right? Like stuff like that, like I'm not warned. Yeah.
Yeah. But now, I mean, how old are your children now?
They are one's 5 already, and the other one's turning 7 this month. So
So you've gone through the obviously the baby phase, which
yes,
was a lot more attention, right? And
yeah,
as they get older, I
yeah.
mean, my son is 16 now, so I'm actually grappling with the idea of him not being so dependent on me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I know next year he's going to be graduating, and I've actually talked to mothers who had children leave their nest, and they're dealing with there's a grief in that
Yeah.
process too. So but tell me a little bit more how each stage so far has, what kind of challenges have you had?
Definitely. So each challenge, I think the first kid was the hardest for me just because as a new parent, you have this like societal pressure. And in a way, it felt like I was in the story of Aesop. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the donkey and the dad and the son. It just feels like if you try to listen to all the conflicting advice that people give, it is almost like you're better off just throwing the donkey to the river. But it was hard because I had so much anxiety as a new parent, and it was more relaxed, more chill with my second. But I can totally see like because I have changed as a person from the time was with my first kid to my second kid. I see like probably paid more attention to my oldest than to my youngest, just because I have to like try to divide my attention, and my youngest have like this big FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's hard because I find like, oh, okay, I don't remember the behavioral challenges with my oldest versus my youngest. So it's just like, okay, so what do I have? What are the behaviors that makes him feel unheard, that he's acting out this way, is seeking out attention so negatively.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's interesting that you talk about that. My son. I think I mentioned on one of your posts there. Uh, I'm a listener, and so as a listener, I'm also supposed to listen to, like, it's every human, doesn't matter what age. It could be the baby,
Oh, totally.
could be a 5-year-old, 10-year-old,
Oh yeah.
a teenager. You just listen differently. But the most important thing I find is that you have to actually be present, even with that child, because I think by listening to them, then you'll get the sense of what's going on, right? But yeah, so with my son having said to me so many times, "Mom, you're not listening to me." Oh my God, I take that to heart, because it's like, oh my God, I'm a listener and I'm not even listening to my son. But then there's that other side of me, and I think you would understand this too, being, we're both Asian mothers, following after my mother. There was no such thing back then as, listening to the child, right? It was like, listening to your elders. We are right, you are wrong. But now times have changed. Definitely have changed. So tell me more about, you're an entrepreneur. You're managing, like I said, your husband, your children, and your business, and whatever else. You've got this Facebook page for mothers. That's a lot of work too. So how are you managing everything in your life?
So I try to like schedule some stuff with a Facebook group. It's more of a fun, like, social outlet for me. I try, because I have noticed that people don't really engage if I feel like this is a chore. So I have to get in the right mindset. So for the past few years it was really hard, but throughout the pandemic, the slowing down forced me to really evaluate my mindset. So my mindset as a business owner, mindset as a parent, mindset, just general mindset, just really digging into what growth mindset was. Because to break free from the any kind of intergenerational trauma, because there are still some times where I feel like, am I still fighting the Second World War of like my grandparents, uh just because of the things that I see is just like, are the behaviors that people have kind of like PTSD, like hangovers of the Second World War, just how people act around food, act around money, and all these things. So it's just like being mindful of those things and having compassion. And it's a learning thing for me. And it's hard because uh there's so many, everyone has their own cup in the family, and trying to balance that, as well as like their growth, is definitely difficult. But working on my own mindset was like one of the things, because I actually began like learning about like cognitive skills, a lot of like behavioral DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. But then thought, well, there's something missing. Then I worked with a psychosomatic healer. She did a lot of like emotion based work. So I started understanding why, like the big why, like why I have so much ache in my shoulder. And she said that you have aches on your shoulder because you're shooting yourself. Should. I was just like, oh wow, now I totally understand why, if there's like any aches in my body, I have to really listen to my body. And then learning to tap into that really also helped me learn to trust my intuition more. Because if we were to go back to first time mom Cynthia, full of anxiety, just like it was, I read so many parenting books, and a lot of them were conflicting. And then luckily met Dr. Pierce. He came recommended. He's retired now. But when he was recommended by my doula at the time. And I was like, I really want to sign up with this doctor. It's not too far from home, not downtown. I wanted to avoid downtown. Yeah. And he said, forget about any books you've read. Kids don't come with a manual.
Yes.
So
Right.
I took that advice to heart. Took me a few years. I took that advice to heart, and I'm like, okay, it's like just read what I read on Google with a grain of salt, essentially, because there's a reason why parenting books sell very well. There, granted, there are really good parenting books that will work if you want to like tap into what gentle parenting looks like, what empathy coaching looks like. Just so a lot of teaching ourselves to recognize emotions also can to coach our kids how to recognize what emotion they are in. Because once I start like understanding the unmet needs of my younger child, it was then he starts to paraphrase this like, this is a no, this behavior is a no. And then he's like, he also understands because he goes to Green Circle Preschool in Edmonton, and he the preschool teach was like what's red zone emotion, what's green zone emotions. So he like calms down and said, talked about his emotions and then what his reactions, and then talked about how those were, and like he does the X with his fingers, does like that's a no. So it's interesting for me because if we were to go back to traditional Asian
Oh, let's talk about that.
oh yes, it will traumatize a lot of people. uh Gosh, it's a choice of the feather duster, the wire hanger, the belt. They call it the bamboo cane. There's a bamboo cane stick. In Malay, it's called rotan, Rotan, and it was a lot of like hiding the bruises, whatever, underneath my skirt uniform as a kid. I can laugh about it now. Yeah,
Sure.
but at the time, it's like you just stay put. If I try to run, it just means that I got hit way more. Like even if it was not my fault, I had no say, absolutely whatsoever. So, in my and when I like dug into like what the adult looks like as an unloved child, and then I was like, holy crap, that's me.
Well, and that's a lot of
Yeah, that's a
you know,
lot of
when you were talking about what you got for punishment, I'm like, oh, I know.
yeah.
Yeah, the wooden spoon, the
Oh,
belt.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
Sometimes
belt,
the smack just with the bare hand,
yeah, the hand.
and the pinching.
I didn't get a pinching. I only got the pinching from a piano teacher. And that was when I told my mom, I was like, I don't want to go to this piano teacher anymore. Because I didn't feel like they were effective in teaching anyway. So it was just like, if they're not um communicating the techniques properly and resort to pinching, all I can remember is the pain and not what I'm supposed to be doing. So in that sense, it was just like, okay, that really taught me, that really opened my eyes. And then when I got exposed to a different piano teacher, I really I learned so much faster. So just like I'm being exposed to that kind of teaching at a young age really inspired me. It's like how I can bring this with me for later in life in the workforce. Just like breaking things down so that people can actually understand at the skill level. Because when you try to talk to a kid as a parent, like up here, and they don't really understand you, just if you're talking to make them feel dumb, they will not react well. That works for and like clients and everywhere.
Humans. Yeah, even animals, actually, when you think about it too.
Yeah. So humans are very intuitive, and a lot of the times it's not what we say, but it's also in our body language. It's also in our tone, and that's what I think a lot of us tend to forget now that everything's digital, everything's like typing with, and then sometimes with the weird emojis.
Yeah.
I still,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. I know. I feel that too. It's like, whenever I text somebody, I would rather have that one-on-one like I'm
Yeah, like a
having with
phone
you
call,
right now,
yeah.
right? Because then I can sense, especially as a listener,
Yeah.
how you're actually responding to the conversation
Totally,
I'm
yeah.
having with you, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, totally. I want to go back to how you were saying that, yeah, it doesn't come with a manual raising a child.
Yeah.
Every child is different,
Very,
right?
yeah.
So you may discipline this child a certain way, and the other child might not react the same way.
Oh, totally,
So
yeah.
so I totally agree with you on that. And then going back to the Asian culture, like it's so funny. Like I watched the way my mom had disciplined me and my brothers, but now that she has grandchildren,
Mhm.
wow, is she ever different?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, because we're in Canada, there's a lot, there's definitely a little bit more rules, right?
Oh, totally.
Legal rules, but yeah, she's a little bit softer now. So even in my mind, I'm like, well, this is how she raised me. I feel like I should do that the same with my kid. It's like, no, he's not responding the same way that,
Yeah.
so it's a lot more him and I, especially him being 16, we're having a lot more conversations.
Mhm.
But I have nephews and nieces, and one nephew that I'm pretty close to, he's now 6, and we're starting to have those conversations where he's asking why, Auntie, can't I do it this way? And I have that conversation because this is what will happen, or you may not like it, or you know depending on the circumstance, I might let him do just learn himself, and teach the lessons himself.
Natural consequences.
Yeah. And so he'll see. Depending on, I don't want him to get hurt, right? So it just
Yeah.
depends on the circumstance. But it seems to be working well, and he's very soft with me, whereas with the other kids, the other cousins, he's rambunctious. It's like
Oh, yeah.
two totally different energies. It's so weird. But yeah, like with my son, I get to have these great, and you're gonna love it. When they get to the teen years, you start to have those deep conversations about life, which is really awesome. But then I'll realize, oh, you are actually 16 years old when you talk about the music and the gaming and all that stuff, right? So yeah, in my situation, when I talk about the challenges that I have, I'm a single mother. I have kids. I'm with my mother who's aging, and my grandmother who's 96 this year, and trying to manage that plus the business. Oh, let me tell you, it's a challenge, but I like to. And actually, I was just telling Taz, sometimes I get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that's going on in my life, and so one, that's why I wouldn't even consider dating right now. There's just no way.
Oh, yeah.
Just I can't fit that, and that person has to compliment me and add to my life, than become a stress more. But I'm just thinking that as a parent, um, trying to balance all this, it's a challenge, but yet I have moments where I'm like, well, you know what? I'm still alive. I can still do this. I am grateful. So, you talk about the mindset, right? How to change that to like, oh my God, I am overwhelmed. But you know what?
So emotions are basically like energies.
Yeah.
Because the moment I show gratitude, I instantly change my mindset. I feel a lot better.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I used to feel annoyed. And I used to feel annoyed when my psychologist said that. It was just like, because every session turned out the same.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me. And then she's like, why don't you start a gratitude journal? Just put the 5-minute timer and just put like what you write down what you're grateful for. And I thought that's weird.
It's definitely, let me tell you, and on this journey, this entrepreneur journey, that gratitude has come to the forefront in my life in the past year and a half. It does switch your mind.
It does.
When you say thank you, and I'm teaching my children that too, right? I'm trying to it's a simple word, and let me tell you, you put a smile on somebody's face.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
like my son, I told him, and we've been doing this every year since he's been in school. Every Christmas, he has to write a Christmas card to his mostly favorite teachers, right? And then at the end of the year, I want him to write a card saying thank you. And I found out through my friends who are teachers that yeah, those cards mean so much. You don't understand.
Totally.
And now he's at the point this year, especially this past Christmas, I didn't really have to tell him to. I just saw him writing down cards, and I said, "How did it go?" Because he delivered them to the teachers, and he said one of the teachers says, "We are a sucker for those cards."
Aw.
So thank you in every possible way
Yeah.
is so important, and I'm seeing that with him now because
Yeah.
I will give him a glass of water. Thank you, Mom.
Aw.
And it's like, just to hear that, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, and I gotta say you're welcome so he knows, you know. It's so important.
It is, yeah. Actually, saying thank you is a great way to attract what we want more of. It's it sounds funny, but if you were to dig into like law of attraction type podcasts, they all say the same thing. It's just like when you express gratitude, you basically like thank you more, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been getting with my son.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've been showing him, thank you for this, thank you for that, and he's giving me that back.
Yeah.
And so it's just wonderful now. And oh wow, what a feeling.
And the fun thing about even though it can be challenging becoming a parent, when you grieve like what you were, it's also important to remember the identity of who we were and incorporate that into our style of parenting too. Because if we have to work on healing our inner child, work on that. Have some time to play with our kids, because when we play with our kids, they will learn to like socialize that way because they learn through play, and then we also learn to connect with our inner child because parenting's not all serious.
Yes.
Not like our
And it
parents.
shouldn't be,
Yeah,
right?
It shouldn't be, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I remember the feeling, the emotion that I remember the most as a child is feeling abandoned.
Oh really?
Yes. The feeling of abandonment actually is a huge, if you, this is important for those who are listening who are business owners, because if you have any feelings of abandonment from your childhood, you're actually gonna it's gonna actually creep into your imposter syndrome, because you're not only self-abandoning, you also tend to have perfectionist tendencies where nothing is good enough. When you tell yourself that's not good enough, I'm not worth charging XYZ, and then you don't price enough to cover your living expenses, that's when you're self-sabotaging, and that creeps into then it becomes yeah. So it in some ways, like, look back inwards and work on those. Go to therapy or hire Milena to listen.
Yeah. Thank you. We're here for you though. So
Yeah, it's just a lot of like a lot of listening to ourselves, because we have to listen to our bodies, because when my bodies tell us you're having this ache because you're not listening to yourself, like just figure out what those issues and challenges are.
that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, because when we have inner child abandonment issues, or like feeling unloved as a child, because back then my mom is a great mom. She just was not, she has probably has had her own inner child traumas too. So she was not, because I remember I confronted her. It's like, Mom, why did you like do all these like horrible things? Because I remember I was having a huge fight with her when one of my kids was born. I can't remember which one now, but there was one where she was just like, she loves, her love language is being able to tell me what I should be doing. And even though it may not be what I think is best. So it's just that old generation thinking.
Sounds like my mother too.
Yes, it's just like not feeling
Yeah.
hurt.
Love you, Mom, though.
Yeah, I love my mom too. It's just a very generational thing, and to break from that, it takes courage. It takes also learning new skills, and also takes like forgiveness. Forgiveness is the huge thing when we become parents, because we not only have to forgive our kids for making mistakes, because we don't want them to grow up like being afraid to try new things.
Yes.
Yeah, so we need to like let them, because if you looked into instead of paying thousands of dollars to look into Montessori, what Montessori really is, if you really dug into it, is giving yourself the ability to make mistakes.
Right.
So, because when we give ourselves a chance to make mistakes, now we teach ourselves what growth mindset is. I am not good at this right now, but this is the lessons that I'm learning,
Yeah.
and I would take those lessons and then revamp my processes, revamp my client experience, so that there's no more conflicts, there's no more miscommunication, there's no more loopholes in like your contracts.
Right. Oh, I remember some of the conversations
Oh, yeah.
you and some of the ladies in there
Yeah.
had about that.
So yeah, so it's just about like to learn and grow. Just understanding that if we did a mistake, it's not the end of the world,
Yeah.
because it felt like that to me. I remember I flunked university. I don't know what I was thinking. I was majoring in math. No, I thought I was good at math. I even tutored math, like to the point where my student got so good and did no longer needed my tutoring services. I was a math major then, and then, but I myself was struggling in geometry, just just spatially challenged. So it's funny because I'm a photographer, right? But is using space in pictures a different thing than like using space in like math.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Holy jeez. Back to the, about the children and the lessons. I know my son, again, growing up, Asian mother, you did something wrong. You
Yeah.
got punished
Oh, totally.
physically,
Physically.
for it. And you
if
got,
it's not
and,
physically, it's shame.
and it's shame, yeah, and with that voice, right?
Mhm.
It's the shouting and the dog, like,
Yeah.
right? And I know these times we don't do that anymore, but with my son, there was been moments where I've had maybe a bad day,
Yeah.
and it's like, right, and
Yeah.
and so I think after the fact, I wish I didn't do that, because now he would be scared to come to me.
Oh, totally.
But I've noticed now he's actually, sometimes he would call himself on it ahead of time. So he would come to me and say, "Okay, I'm just so you know, I didn't get good marks in this test. I'm just warning you now because the teacher's gonna call." You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, well, I really appreciate you telling
honest,
me, being honest, because obviously I'm not gonna yell at you for that. So let's just try to work and see how we can fix this so that you can get a better mark, sort of thing. There's been situations like that so many times now. So I appreciate him, and it's that communication too, right?
Oh, yeah, open
Making sure that I give him that safe space to be able to come to me. I'm still a work. I'm human.
Yeah.
And I'm still a work in progress.
Mhm.
I don't claim to be the best listener in the
No,
world,
no.
right? Even though I've been trained
Mhm.
better than others, but it's still, I have to practice it daily. So
Mhm.
so yeah. But wow, what an incredible conversation we're having here.
I don't know. I love this because we're just learning to be able to listen and tune into others. Is actually what makes my work different too.
Yeah.
Because I can like actually listen to what the family story is. Because I remember a friend's like, Cynthia, I really love your work because not one picture is the same from the other. It's not like you just pose people into a certain pose and then you take the picture, because if you put them all next to each other, the only thing is that changes is the pictures. But with how I work is like I direct them into a certain pose, and then I give them prompts that are unique for them. They're not just Googled. When people ask me, how do you get the pictures? It's like, well, I listen to my clients. I figure out what they want. And if we have, and then what I noticed a huge change was this moment I stopped doing minis. I hate that word. But the moment I still so minis is supposed to be a more affordable way of getting photos done, but I feel like it doesn't give people. It's almost like a snack size. If you're going, if you're hungry, but if you really need a lot of photos, if you're just getting a snack or like a little $5 Abby meal size, you won't feel content. It's just only barely scratching the surface, and I can do minis if I really wanted to, but gosh, they they are exhausting. Like the I'll if I were to do a mini type, they still get like the full hour for with me just because with how I work, it need the time to connect. It's because with my work, it's all about connections. Connections not just between the family members themselves, but connection between the family members and the camera, because the camera is the third dimension. And then to be able to build that enough trust, we can you can like approach them, and then be able to read kids too, because some kids they don't feel safe with a stranger. Oh, for sure. So that's when I use my like my zoom lens, and then just like yell like to do, and then they feel safe that way. So just like learning to read clients, because no one workflow is the same from one client to the other, because they you just have to understand what the story.
That's a great point. That is something that I actually teach in my class for entrepreneurs, how to
Yes.
listen better to be successful in your business. And that aspect of connecting is so important.
It is, yeah.
When I go out to networking events with the chamber and such, the people that I meet too, I say I'm a heart based entrepreneur.
Yeah.
If anyone is going to do any collaboration with me, we got to have that relationship.
Oh, totally.
You cannot sell to me anything. You actually have to get to know me as a person.
Yes.
And I'm still getting emails and people calling me and even on social media, and it's like, well, I do this, maybe we can talk, and I'm like, no, not really. Because that's not how you're supposed to start off the conversation with me.
You have to
Like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? That's the way I work.
Yeah.
And so with the class that I'm teaching, just what you described there about connecting with your clients, getting to know them as a family, right, or as humans.
Yeah.
What a difference.
It is a huge difference, because I tell this to my clients. It's just like, don't say the word cheese, because they're gonna look constipated, and I absolutely hate using Photoshop to make kids grumpy face to turn into a smile, because it looks creepy. Creepy. You can.
And you can't tell, yeah.
No. Actually, there's a way to make kids. I actually had one request, but it's like it's a kid with adult teeth, basically. I had to like make sure that it didn't look fully adult teeth. So I only had that one off request, and it was hilarious. So when I see like people asking, can you make this face into like a more smile, and just like, I'll just keep scrolling. I don't want to deal with this. I know how, I just don't want to. Oh yeah.
It's too funny. So tell me a little bit more about your business, your photography business.
Yes.
How did you even start to get into doing
Oh
this?
gosh. So actually, it was my passion for food. Weirdly enough, I picked up a camera only because I wanted to document how I was making food.
Oh.
Yeah, it was not completely different from doing portraits altogether. And I still have the food blog. Surprisingly, like I have people like still liking the recipes. How many years it has been dormant since 2020. But people love. There's a few, like the chocolate sauerkraut cake is a very popular one. on the blog. The blog is called Sinful Kitchen, CYNFUL. And it was neat because my passion for food has connected with me with other food bloggers in Canada as well. And then but I was still struggling with my photography at the time. That was like 2015-ish, just before I got pregnant. I actually started my food blog in 2010s, so 2010, and then 2015 when I picked up the first DSLR. I actually had a not different camera at the time before my food blog. Um, then it was not until I was struggling, sort of like understanding my camera better to take better pictures of like my dog and my kids once when I really dove into photography just as a hobby. But 2020, as you know, 2020 hit. It was, for some, it was learning how to make sourdough. For me, it was honing in on my camera skills. Wow. So I took a course by Caitlin James. And then I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense with like the lighting and whatnot. And the more I dug into, it's just a huge rabbit hole. And then I bought a macro lens to take better pictures of food. Little did I know it is the lens that I use a lot now for wedding details and for like any jewelry details or any detail shots. So it was that lens that led me to buying a full frame camera, and that full frame camera I still have as my second body now. And then I have since bought another full frame they're both Nikon. And it's been an interesting experience, just because the industry in Edmonton is so small with photography. So it's been fun just to like get to know and like network with other photographers. But you also see the dark side of things when where people are stuck in the scarcity mindset. So you now I just like kind of like gauge people and just be like, I'll just like scroll and like not date and not be involved in that kind of thing.
For sure.
Yeah, because my to me, I felt betrayed. There was this one time when a photo of mine. I was doing boudoir at the time. I still do boudoir, but not as much anymore. So right now I'm doing mostly just families and weddings. But at the time I was trying out like couples boudoir. It was a creative outlet for me at the time. And this mom from a mom group that I'm no longer part of, she thought it would be great to use my photo without my permission to run her a model call. So that was when I was like, it just felt ick to me because I spent time and money to rent a studio, to find people who are willing to be in front of my camera just so that I can try to photograph more of those. But and then I was like, you know what? It's not really worth getting into this drama, so just like let it slide eventually. But then it just was not a good feeling. You feel betrayed.
Yeah.
So especially coming from another mother too. But you kind of have to like respect that there are different like levels of people who are interested. Some people are like pros, some people are hobbyists. So just like recognizing that too, and just and the way I see it is like if I can help lift other people as I climb, then I'm building a better community. Yeah, and yeah, so it's just like and I try to instill that to my kids too. Today, my youngest, my 5-year-old, he's like, "Hi, handsome," to like this random like chef when we were ordering food. It was just like flirting.
It's lovely.
I was just like, "Oh my gosh, where do I hide my face?"
I wouldn't have done that. I'd be like so proud. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for this time. But before we go, I have to ask one very important question. and that is what matters to you.
I would say like what matters to me most is just inspiring everyone to be kind to each other. That's why I have my Facebook group. It's just like it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
If you were to in both my boudoir group and my motherhood group, my women's and my motherhood group, and if you're wanting to join, it's open to anyone in Western Canada, really. Motherhood in Edmonton, by Cynthia Priest Photography. It basically shows that no matter where we are in our parenting journey, we need support. We need to feel heard. We need a place to vent. But there comes a balance where we just need to learn skills as well. Just a different vibe because a lot of the time mom groups can be pretty toxic, and I want to create a judgment-free zone.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just like understanding that shame is not a good emotion to hang on to. Perfection is based on shame. So do the best that we can, and and just work to its kindness.
Well, thank you so much, and happy Mother's Day to
Yeah,
you.
happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Thank you.